the US midterm elections. We're straight to Washington. My colleague Laura Jay is standing by. And it's been interesting, Laura, as we've looked at these numbers come in gradually, expectations of a wave. It's certainly no tidal wave right now, is it?
Certainly not. And if you could say anything right now, approaching midnight here in DC, you'd say that the Republicans did a pretty bad job of managing expectations, talking about this wave or this tsunami, because we're certainly not seeing it at the moment. There is no doubt that the Republicans have picked up some key races in some of these crucial seats, but the message out of it is not entirely clear. Have a look at some of the big wins. Kemp and DeSantis, they kept their distance from Donald Trump, but then we've just seen the race called for J.D. Vance in Ohio, and he was all in on Trump, and that is a big win for him there as well. I want to bring in now our political analyst that we've been talking to, Eric Ham. Eric, great to see you. Let's talk about Ohio first. J.D. Vance couldn't have been more all in on Trump. He was the Trump candidate. What does that tell you about Ohio in that race?
Ohio, again, another state that was seen as a battleground state just 10 years ago. Barack Obama won it twice. Trump won it. And now we see that this is a state that is moving further and further into the Republicans' hands. But still, tonight, they're going to breathe a sigh of relief that J.D. Vance won that race. The polls leading up to this race were always really tight. In fact, many of them showed the Democrat, Tim Ryan, was actually running ahead. The fact that J.D. Vance won, and won with about the same percentage that Donald Trump did just 2 years ago, that means that clearly Donald Trump still holds sway in this party and in some of these key states that Republicans are going to need heading into 2024.
Well, it's a mixed bag, though, isn't it? Because you look at the J.D. Vance result and say, well, Trump's really strong there in Ohio. He's got that area. But what about these other candidates that certainly kept their distance? I mean, you're talking about Kemp, you're talking about Ron DeSantis. Florida's an amazing story tonight for the Republicans, given it was a Democrat stronghold just a couple of years ago. What does it say about Trump and his presidential hope for a second time?
If Trump wants to be the nominee, he will be the nominee. He is still seen by many within the Republican Party as the head of the party, the leader of the party, and many of them expect that he will run. And the question will be, who will challenge him, if anyone will? I think what we're seeing now is Donald Trump is beginning to solidify his base and his in the lead up to his run for the White House. And while, of course, there were some candidates who certainly did not, or who certainly kept their distance from him, expect that they will come around to be very supportive of his run for the White House if, in fact, he decides to run.
Yeah, looking through that lens, the Trump lens, if you like, and the Pennsylvania race as well. Fetterman's been ahead all night. He's ahead by about 70,000 votes. Dr. Oz was a bit of a weird candidate. I say that because Donald Trump kind of reluctantly endorsed Dr. Oz in the end, and Dr. Oz was running a little bit of an agenda, rejecting the division that he saw that Donald Trump stoked, didn't he?
Well, I think Pennsylvania has its own mores and ideologies in terms of what we're seeing there. Already, Josh Shapiro, the gubernatorial candidate, the Democrat, has already won that state. And it was always going to be a very tough pickup, or at least tough for Republicans to hold that seat. Fetterman is the lieutenant governor. He's got wide popularity in that state. The question, of course, is can he hold on? Because right now, if we're talking about a red wave, that's a state that
Are we still talking about a red wave?
If we are, that's a state Republicans need to hold on to, and it looks like Democrats may actually pick that seat up.
Okay, so it all comes down to the West, doesn't it? We're going to look really closely at Arizona, Nevada.
Yeah. And right now, those are states where Joe Biden won. Democrats believe they have what it takes to win. And, of course, the early voting in Arizona is something people are certainly looking at. Nevada is going to be a very different race because, again, the early vote was not what many people expected. And, of course, the same-day turnout in Clark County, which is the largest county in Nevada, they did not get the Democratic turnout that they hoped to get. So this could be a potential pickup for Republicans in that state.
Looking at the big picture, I mean, It is pretty bad for the Republicans, given the worst inflation, cost of living conditions in 40 years. That is dominating people's lives at the moment. They weren't able to capitalise that on as much as they thought they were. But on the other side of this, Democrats would be fools to see this as an endorsement of the path that Joe Biden's on. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I think right now we're looking at a mixed bag. Historically, the party in power always loses seats. And this, if things stay, if they hold where Democrats hold the Senate, Republicans pick up the House, and I think both sides are going to look at this as a win. That there were those who believe that there needs to be a focus on inflation in the economy, and others who believe that there needs to be a focus on dealing with and confronting abortion and individual rights.
We spoke to you yesterday, we spoke to you earlier tonight, and I spoke to you about the abortion rights issue. I moved through Texas last week. It was such a mixed bag. I've got to say, not a lot of people were talking about it. They were talking about the economy, they were talking about division right across America. But as we see these results come in, has it flipped? I mean, we were talking earlier in the night about how the Democrats maybe concentrated too much on this issue. They weren't talking about the big picture stuff enough, but this could have flipped. This issue seems like it may have hurt the Republicans. Some MAGA Republicans wanting to take the Senate and the House and make national abortion laws and ban it for 15 weeks. I mean, this could actually be the scenario where the Republicans have got to rethink their whole strategy and message on it.
Well, actually, I think another way of looking at this is this could be the saving grace for Democrats, because not for this issue, we probably would have seen a red wave. And so I think this is still...
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's a stopgap.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think depending on what we see in these races tonight, I think both sides are going to come out of this spinning this as a win for both sides.
Yeah.
And we still have a number of gubernatorial races to be looking at as well.
Yeah, we do. Eric, it's a pleasure to talk to you on this very chilly night in DC as we approach midnight. But still, all worth it. Thanks so much. So there you go, Kieran. Really interesting insights there from Eric about where the wins are, where both parties will go in terms of their political messaging on this result that we're seeing so far this evening.